by Ryan Heath. Send us your Dear Politico questions and dilemmas. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe on SoundCloud. View in your browser. Listen to this week's EU Confidential podcast via SoundCloud, Apple iTunes, Stitcher. Curb Your Idealism. This week's podcast comes to you from Florence, where the European University Institute's State of the Union conference was held Thursday and Friday. With a populist nationalist government on the immediate horizon in Italy, it wasn't surprising to hear calls for more Europe by many in attendance. Italian President Sergio Mattarella criticized his own citizens for forgetting their history. European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker derided part-time Europeans in national capitals, and European Parliament President Antonio Tajani hit out at tech companies for not creating jobs or paying enough tax. Back in Brussels, EU official and author Vincent Stewart was offering a more realistic take on what the EU can and does do, in his new book Curb Your Idealism. Hear my interview with him in the podcast. The podcast panel discusses Facebook's new policy for advertisements in Ireland's abortion referendum, and whether a pricing policy that forces customers into self-examination at a new lesbian bar in Brussels is a smart idea. They charge different prices for different types of people, depending on their privilege. A message from Grow with Google. All over Europe, careers and businesses have the potential to grow with the help of digital skills. Hear inspiring stories from some of the 725,000 Europeans so far who have found a job or grown their business with our help. By 2020, the committee is the EU's second oldest institution, but has for decades been elbowed out of the limelight, in particular since the European Parliament moved to direct elections in 1979 and claimed the mantle of voice of the people in Brussels. Jair, who's been in Brussels since 2002 as a member of the committee, is determined to change the institution's profile. Traditionally, it's been seen as the voice of people at work. Two-thirds of the committee is made up of employer and trade union representatives. Jair also wants it known as an EU link to its grassroots. Aside from pushing more generally for a European Renaissance, including the in vogue EU slogan of empowering and protecting, he specifically wants the ESC to be more inclusive. With Jair's election, there are now two male Italian former journalists running EU institutions. The other is the Parliament's Antonio Tajani. That's twice the number of women leading EU institutions. Emily O'Reilly, the EU Ombudsman, is the only woman. Jair is beginning his push by appointing a female chief of staff, Alicja Magdalena Erbowska. He already works with two female vice presidents and a senior team that is majority female. Jair's underlying argument is that the EU is losing the war of emotions in the wider world. In struggling to win as many hearts as minds, the EU risks being unable to adapt to its broader political environment. In addition to the justice that women deserve the right to equal opportunities and an end to the gender pay gap, women are, in general, much more capable to develop and to put into practice emotional intelligence. We need these enormous reserves of good energy that women have to help us to build a new vision, a new positive capacity to re-engage in Europe, he told EU Confidential. Talk of the town. Are you a govster? That's a person who works in a public service-dominated city who manages to be cool. We here, European Parliament assistants, have moved on from WhatsApp as a means of confidential communication, for parties, for warning colleagues about bosses with wandering hands. Signal is the new app favored by Brussels' young and adventurous. When one prime minister's office is not enough, Viktor Orbán has been sworn in for his fourth term and immediately established not one, but three, prime ministerial offices. That's the Cabinet Office of the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister's Office and the Government Office of the Prime Minister. Anti-Orbán blogger Eva Balog writes, in 2010, when Gordon Bajnai handed over his office to Viktor Orbán, the Office of the Prime Minister had 95 employees. Today that number is over 1,500, taking the hammer and sickle to Adidas. Anis Badir, and MEP from Latvia, is furious at Adidas CEO Kasper Rorsted. In a letter seen by EU Confidential, she wrote to the CEO to express her deep shock at recent clothing items designed with the Soviet Union symbol and abbreviation of the USSR in English. She reminded Rorsted that the USSR occupied her country for 50 years, and deported 500,000 people from the Baltics to Siberia. If values of the Adidas celebrate such a cruel regime, perhaps you should consider releasing your new collections with Nazi or Daesh symbols, she adds. Given that Adidas founder Adi Dassler was, in fact, a member of the Nazi Party from 1933, he did however supply shoes to the legendary black athlete Jesse Owens in 1936. That criticism may well cut close to the bone at Adidas HQ. Others also weighed in with criticism, and Adidas has now removed the clothing from its online store. Don't forget Eurovision, hear the Politico cheat sheet. Wow factor, if ABBA got on stage for their live reunion. Non-wow factor, Chinese television censoring a rainbow flag waved by a member of the Eurovision semi-final audience. The state broadcaster quickly had their Eurovision broadcast rights revoked. Nominative Determinisms of the Week, Working for the EU, How to Get In. That's a new book by Johannes de Berlaymont, or perhaps that's a clever nom de plume, as de Berlaymont leaves no other digital trace. Meanwhile, James Brokenshire is the UK's new Minister for Local Government. EU WTF. Literally. This week Elżbieta Bieńkowska, European Commissioner for Industry and the EU's Single Market, exclaimed during a European Parliament visit, F***K how I hate this, meaning her job, either forgetting that her microphone was still on, or that it was there at all. That followed Carmen Martínez Castro, Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy's press secretary, insulting a crowd of pensioners who had booed her boss. The apoplectic, and later apologetic Castro said, "How I would like to give them the finger and say F***K off," a comment that a press microphone picked up. The lesson: politicos are human, but you better have some goodwill in the bank before dismissing the people who pay your salary. Top Politico reads how Europe can save the Iran deal, Natalie Tocci and Riccardo Alcaro, how Italy could blow up Europe as we know it, Ryan Heath door open to keep UK and EU, defence, Jacopo Baragazzi. Top Weekend reads from elsewhere Forgetting the Madeleine, long reads. The Hidden Women of May. 68, New York Times. In these Harlem jazz clubs, musicians and audience became one. New York Times, ***, a message from Grow with Google. The world is undergoing a digital transformation, offering enormous opportunities for growth, innovation, and jobs. However, digital skills and tools can still seem out of reach to many. That's why we started the Grow with Google initiative 3 years ago, and this year have pledged to help 1 million Europeans find a job or grow their business by 2020. We want to offer everyone the chance to grow with Google through our free digital skills training courses, tools, and in-person coaching, from the workforce of today to the students who will drive the workforce of tomorrow. Hear inspiring stories from some of the 725,000 Europeans who have already found a job or grown their business with Google's help by visiting Playbook, all our Politico Pro Policy morning newsletters.